Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else. Welcome to another episode of Your Future in Sales and Marketing. I'm Andrew Cannock. I'm a specialist recruiter in sales and category, and I'm very excited to be joined on the pod today by Michelle Foley. Michelle, how are you?
I'm well. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. So, second appearance for you, but first solo. And we're going to dive into your journey and a few of your perspectives in a bit more detail this time, which I'm really excited to do. So, to kick us off, the question we ask everyone, what is your favorite brand? And you can't pick one that you've worked on.
Spotify is very high on my list. It doesn't just play music, it understands me. And on any drive to work in the morning, I can be listening to an old favorite, a news podcast, this podcast, or reading a book. And so for me, it's kind of become integrated into my life. Recently this year though, and I love how the brand's evolved over time, they've added a concerts near you playlist feature. So I've become into all this other music that I wasn't as interested in, and within one click can buy tickets to a concert. And that's genius. So Spotify, very high on my list.
Yeah, great call. It really does feel like that's a brand that gets to know you personally.
Yeah,
a very
for sure.
personalized approach. Yeah, great. Tell us a bit about life before career. Where did you grow up?
Well, arguably my career began when I was a kid working in business. I'm second generation Lebanese. My mum came to Australia as a newborn and my dad as a 7-year-old. And my grandparents migrating over here worked multiple jobs for many years to set up a life in Australia, like many migrants and Australians did for their families. And my dad, at a young age in a very early corporate career, decided to throw it all away and start his own business. He ended up buying a petrol station, which was very random at the time. And as a 12-year-old, that's really how I learnt business. Back then, fun fact, Andrew, the price of petrol was 29 cents a litre.
Wow.
So I am showing my age here. But I think I learned a lot more than I realised at the time. And the thing that really stuck with me was being true to your customers, understanding what creates value, and really the basics of business. So that was a very early foundation for me, and then something that stuck with me over time. And every business my parents bought, I ended up working in.
Wow. And so to fast forward to now, you've just been promoted into a new role. So you are now the managing director of the ANZ snacking business unit at Arnott. Big congratulations.
Thank you.
Before we dive into a bit of what that looks like, take us through your journey at Arnott. How did it start?
Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to be the custodian of brands that are now 160 years old. So it's a real privilege to run the ANZ snacking business unit, but one that has come after many years of working at Arnott. As I described, I started my journey very early as a kid. I did a commerce degree. I worked in the healthcare consumer industry and really found a bit of a love of brands. I was working on antiseptics and sunscreens, not as exciting as Tim Tams. And my first role at Arnott was an assistant brand manager on Tim Tams, which for many is like an amazing role. For me, I went from working in a business with 20 people and everyone I knew to 10 times that. And it was really daunting. I didn't enjoy it at all. There were so many processes. And I often say to people who are new in the Arnott's business now, you come in, you learn a process. This is how we'll induct you into the business. But that's not actually how things get done. Things get done around the processes. So that was really difficult for me. But the one thing I did well and became my anchor point was building relationships because I knew how to do that. So progressively over my career at Arnott, I worked on multiple brands in marketing. I worked in category marketing again, and then progressively went through into running the marketing group and then over into my prior role of Chief Customer Officer for the ANZ business.
And so as you touched on, you've had an incredibly diverse journey with Arnott, working across multiple different functions. What's kept you growing, challenged and inspired at Arnott over the time that you've been there?
I'd probably step back to the industry as a whole. I think that's the bit that starts the excitement, because working in FMCG, you have to be adaptable, and adaptability is really the main ingredient to success. And we've seen the industry change so much in the last 20 years that I've worked in it. Data-driven retail, technology, end-to-end supply chain, understanding the consumers, and equally the consumer landscape changing. And it's really that excitement that has kept me engaged in the industry. And then in additional to that, life at Arnott's. For me, the inspiration is working for a business that's committed to Australian manufacturing. We have one of the largest baking facilities in the Southern Hemisphere out here in Western Sydney. And I was there a few weeks ago with one of our partners, and anytime I walk down the line and have a Tim Tam and take people along, you realise how embedded our brand is in Australians and new Australians. And for me to be able to continue to grow that, employ all the people that we do, and foster Australian manufacturing is really, really inspirational and, you know, not as common as it used to be. So that would be one really big part of it. I think the challenges is our business has changed over the many years that I've been there. We were under the ownership of Campbell's, the US business, and then for a number of years were either up for sale, being sold, or standing up and integrating a new business and then buying more businesses after that. That's been a huge challenge, and I just feel really fortunate that I've been able to be part of the business while our business model has changed. But equally, you learn a lot in those processes, and there's been no steady state. So that's absolutely kept me challenged and really enjoy it. And every day, as I said before, is different, which for me, that variety is so important.
And increasingly these days, people will work for multiple businesses across a career.
Yeah.
And many people see it as being really important to career progression, is getting that breadth of experience. And in many cases, it is. What made you stay, and what helped you keep moving up through the organisation?
I will say at many points in my career at Arnott's, I have seen colleagues who've become friends go, they leave the industry, they'll go and get new opportunities, get promoted. And I always talk to them and they always look back and say how happy their time at Arnott's was and how much they learned. So I think in many cases, when it's right for the individual, I am always advocating to say, take that step. For me, that hasn't happened. I haven't had that moment where I say, oh, maybe it's time to go. And I think that's because I've had opportunities that have been really rewarding. There's times where I've stayed because I worked for a manager who I was learning so much from. And there were times where I stayed where I was in either a cross-functional team or a leadership team where my colleagues and I worked so well together and we were unstoppable delivering great results. So I don't think it's been one thing. Maybe the common thread is the people, but I really think the opportunities and different experiences that I've been able to have when we were owned by Campbell's or we're now in our own business has been the real driver for me to stay.
And how did you make the leap from marketing into sales leadership? You've done it at a very senior level. Just talk us through how that came to be and how the transition's been for you.
Yes, thank you. I did do that at a very senior level, actually. And at the time, did remind the CEO who was putting me into this role that I'd never run an account myself before. I think having a deep customer understanding and a very deep consumer understanding, you can be a marketing lead or a sales lead. And quite honestly, I would encourage anyone that's in either of those functions, make the switch because you underestimate what you can bring to marketing or what marketing can bring to sales. Having a good foundation in category roles, understanding insights and understanding the shopper and shopper marketing, having those teams underneath me, even though I wasn't running an account, my peers were running the customers. And so when you're on the sidelines, sometimes you're a little bit more objective. You know, sometimes you can see the problem in a very different way. And I think I was able to bring that in my category roles so that when I came back from marketing and went back into sales, I knew I had that experience behind me. And you also look at marketing in a very different way when you've come back from sales. And I can really attest to that. You love the brand. You want to drive a brand like Tim Tam. But at the end of the day, Andrew's got to walk into the supermarket, see it on the shelf and be inspired to buy it. And how we bring our products to lives for shoppers at that point of purchase, I became much more passionate about after I'd been in the sales team into marketing. And then when I came back again.
Yeah, I don't need much inspiration to buy a Tim Tam, just so you know, if anything, I need something to slow me down. So as you reflect on the journey so far, you're now moving into a managing director role. What do you feel have been the sort of pivotal moves or moments that have helped you be ready for this next step?
For me, it's when I was put into the Chief Customer Officer role, and that was when I joined our exec team. And that was about 4.5 years ago. And I joined this leadership team of all these incredibly experienced global leaders, lots of different experiences over time. And I was the newbie on the team. And yes, I had great commercial experience, but I'd never sat on a leadership team. So being able to have that experience over the last 4 years would be the most pertinent part where I've gone, okay, now I'm ready. That was a real test of confidence for me, and I think I had to build that over time. And one of the things sometimes maybe people forget or I didn't realize is when you sit on a leadership team with other people, you can actually get feedback from each other. You don't all have to be there and be the perfect representation of your function. And early on, one of my peers gave me some feedback around my clarity of messaging in our weekly leadership team forums. And I thought, shit, no one's ever given me feedback before in a forum like this. How fantastic. And between my peers and I, we've been able to develop that. So having that coaching from my peers over time would be the thing that's probably prepared me the most to be ready to take on the managing director role and to have my own team doing that for each other and also doing the same for me.
Yeah, great. Awesome. So you've got responsibility now for such an iconic portfolio. How do you balance protecting those legacy brands and the equity and the heritage there while also looking for opportunities to drive innovation and growth?
Well, this year Arnott turns 160. So when you talk about legacy brands, we have some real legacy brands in our portfolio. I think to touch on my earlier point, the consumer landscape's changing and consumer tastes are changing. The population is very different and, you know, a humble wagon wheel or iced Vovo is not necessarily something everyone grew up with when 30% of Australians weren't born in Australia. So we have to be really pointed and clear as to what brands we're growing and how we bring things to life. Not all of our innovation has succeeded, and anyone listening to this would know the statistic that only 5% of innovations are successful, and we've had some wins, we've had some failures. The way we've done it best is using the brands that we have. So we've done these fantastic collaborations in the hot cross bun category with Iced Vovo and Wagon Wheel hot cross buns. And excellent way we've been able to get people back into those brands, and our Ice Vovo biscuit sales go up the minute we launch something in another category. So that's been great. Products like Tim Tam Jats, that was an April Fool's joke that our marketing team put on social media to receive a phone call from Coles to say, could we have that product? And now it's one of our most successful innovations that we've done. Changing consumer preferences. I think I shared with you and a few weeks ago a whole raft of our gluten-free products. And we know now that that's something that we had to build an entire new factory for. But if we didn't launch into gluten-free, we'd be missing out on a whole subset of consumers who won't enjoy Arnott's products. So continuing to adapt and to change, but still holding on to the brands that we have. Tim Tam gluten-free, we were never going to compromise. It had to taste exactly like a Tim Tam, and it does. And then finally, growing in other markets. I know that you would tell me that a penguin, for those listening on the line, a penguin is what? The English version of a substandard Tim Tam.
Exactly, yeah. As much as it pains me to sign off on the substandard part, I'm inclined to agree.
But that product has been so successful in the UK, but we know many English residents love and know our brand. So we thought, well, why not take Tim Tam to the UK? And we've launched over there and it's been exceptionally successful, and we're continuing to grow in those markets. So between changing consumer preferences, things like gluten-free, unlocking brands that people love but may not know about, and entering new markets with iconic brands, that's really been three big parts of how we'll continue to innovate and grow despite being 160 years young.
It's funny that you mentioned the sort of flavoured hot cross bun varieties. I saw an article recently talking about how the rest of the world is fascinated that we do this in Australia. It's not really a thing elsewhere, apparently. These novelty flavoured hot cross buns, apparently, as with most things, the rest of the world looks at Australia and goes, what are they doing down there? But they're missing out. Coming on to sort of people and culture, what sort of culture do you aim to foster at Arnott, and how do you go about doing that?
Culture is a function of all the little things you do every day, and I'm a very visible leader. We have hundreds of people within the sales team, and just like I spoke earlier of the opportunities that I was given over time, I like to play a role in being there and understanding the opportunities for all of the team underneath me. I spend many lunches with the team when I can, exchanging stories on whose sporting team won or lost over the weekend, what shows we watched the night before. And I find in those conversations, one, it gives me an out to switch into something else, but you get to know the team at a different level. And I think when you do that and I form those personal connections, I have a genuine interest in people, that actually builds the culture person by person by person. And for me, that's really important. We're a very high-performing business. We're very focused on accountability and driving results. And I think in that mode, you're wanting people to continuously improve. You're wanting to get the best out of your people, but you can't forget of all of the other important parts that go with it, and those small moments, or the walks around the block, or I might say, who wants a coffee at 2:30 because I really need a coffee, so someone else will come with me. It's really those human connections, I think, that you have to couple with driving business performance, and that's really encompassing of the culture at Arnott that I want to continue to drive. Yeah,
love that. And for the first time, we have 5 generations working in some businesses.
Crazy.
And I'm sure in a business the size of Arnott, that is absolutely the case. In your view, how do we all stay open-minded and adaptive to collaborate effectively?
Well, funny you ask this question, because on Thursday we celebrated one of our team members 50 years with Arnott. He works at our Huntingwood factory, and he got a job at the factory when he was 18 from his mother, who also worked for Arnott. So we have someone whose family's crossed maybe we think 70 or 75 years. So yes, we are very multi-generational in our business. I think it's easy to get caught in the set ways of how you work. And on my current leadership team, we are all Generation X, and we probably all think the same and act the same. And we often joke about forms of communication at work. And I remember about a year ago, one of the younger members of the team said to me, do you know sending a smiley face emoji or a thumbs up emoji is passive aggressive?
Oh, the thumbs up emoji. Absolutely. What have I done wrong if someone sends me that?
What are you talking about? Or the look on their face when you open a PowerPoint presentation and they're like, you don't use Canva? And it's like, no, I don't use Canva, but thank you. And the list goes on. So I don't think it's around your way is the right way or my way is the right way. The open-mindedness, for me, I think we need to anchor everyone to the purpose of why we're there and the different things that different generations can bring, or the way that they work. It just comes down to communication. And if you've got a shared purpose, the beauty of the diversity of the 5 generations is, just like any other form of diversity, I think that you can get to great results. One thing I've found with the younger generation is less of early on kind of the, I'll speak up about this, and they more kind of will walk away rather than tell you what they think. And so really being able to see in forums where I'm in with different generations, hey, I might just ask for someone else's feedback, or get someone one-on-one, or form a communication with them in a different way than I would with one of my peers who I'd probably ring and pick up the phone and have a chat. So I do think you have to be able to adjust your style and be more curious as to why the different generations work the way they work, rather than, oh, this is how we do it around here, not how you do it now. Well, hang on, why do you do that this way? Reverse mentoring has become very popular. We don't do it at Arnott. It's something that I find really interesting, particularly in light of the generation after me and what they can bring, but a very complex one to solve. But I think the open-mindedness has to come from, we're all here for the same purpose, and being really clear in how you will work together.
If there's one key takeaway, senior leaders, do not use the thumbs up emoji unless you want your staff to think their next performance review isn't going to go so well. So change in technology is accelerating all the time. It feels hard to keep up with at the moment. I'm curious to know how are you using AI at Arnott, and how are you personally using it if you are?
Sure. AI is here and it's only just getting started. And candidly, just even in the last few months, I feel like the pace is super quickening around me every day, both personally and professionally. We're trialing Microsoft Copilot at the moment, and it's game changing. And talking to the earlier point of multi-generational, there's heaps of different generations who are part of the pilot, and we're all sitting there feeling the same level of daunting. And I'm like, okay, it's not just me. I get it. We use a few functions, or I personally use a few functions. And the one that I think I found most beneficial is the meeting summaries. Not because at the end of a meeting we can just see who got what actions, but it's actually changed our behaviors in the meetings to be more concise, to just get to the point of what we want to be able to talk about while still having a little bit of banter, because AI is listening and you need to get to the point so it can summarize it and send out something meaningful. So I found that really useful. I think it cuts through the noise really well. And to my earlier point, there's so much changing in the industry and the landscape and our retailers and our brands. If there's tools to help us cut through that noise, and I can focus on decisions, not filtering for information, then that's only a good thing. You think about the many hours over time that you use searching for emails. I think someone sent me this, search the subject title. Where is it? I can't find it. Well, Copilot just instantly answers those things. So I'm really excited that will help us make decisions better, get away from the clutter. And this week we're trialing Copilot agents, which is where Copilot has a bit of initiative, I understand, and can proactively do things. So stay tuned. I will let you know what I learn about it. But that part of it for me is really exciting. And I think for businesses, something that will enable us to get to our purpose and our goals much quicker.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm a real basic AI user. I love the AI that happens in the background of Netflix to tell me what show to watch, but I have these 5 items in my fridge. Chat GPT, can you tell me what to make for dinner? And I've used it really well for holiday planning, which I find fantastic, but not much more beyond that. What about you?
Yeah, a little bit the same. Definitely using it personally. ChatGPT is a go-to. Probably share more with that than I do with my wife. And I think as a business, we're looking at solutions we can use as well. And I think to your point, it's about how do we start to automate some of the time-consuming stuff that distracts us from our core purpose and allows us to dial up the real human elements of what we do, which is building relationships and influencing. Yeah. This episode not sponsored by Copilot. There are other AI solutions available.
There are many.
Yeah. So for those aspiring to executive leadership, and this is a common challenge people face as they progress through their careers, making these sorts of steps up, what are the real skills that matter when you're stepping up from a functional head role to a broader, more sort of general management position?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. My CEO, who I work for now and will continue to work for, he shared an analogy with me when I talked to him about this role. And his view was, you're no longer playing the instrument in the orchestra, you're conducting. And if you think that you can be there directing the team to success while still playing the violin, it's not going to happen. And he's right. And I think I often stand back and go, am I directing the team or am I getting involved? And I would summarize that as the biggest change is you have to zoom out. And that's really challenging when you work in sales because we are inherently short term. Everyone sees our results every single day of the year. We're the only function where you walk in and everyone knows how things are going. And by nature of that, you're in the detail. So the zooming out is really, really important. What are the trends? What are the what if scenarios? How are we as a business preparing for multiple futures? Because what we're preparing for will likely not be what actually happens. That for me is one of the really, really important skills. And then the other thing I would say is your ability to influence matters much more than control. I'm not going to be the one that's there getting the work done and I can't control the way that you or any of the team are going to do it. But how am I using my leadership team to demonstrate my influence? And then finally, I would say connecting the dots. You can't be solving the problems, you have to set the agenda. And I'm going to find that difficult because I love solving problems with the team. I love getting in the tent and understand. But I think when you take that step up, I need to say, where are we placing our bets? How are we going to win? What is our right to win? What competitor are we dislodging? And do we have the resources required to be able to go forward and win? So the agenda setting aspect, the setting the vision for the team, and really the influencing in a different way, they're very, very big changes to running the specifics of a function and something I'm really looking forward to doing.
Yeah, awesome. I think there's so much in there, even for people making the step up from like a NAM role to a national business manager role, like people stepping into leadership roles. It's really tough because you're promoted because you're technically very good at your job and good at solving problems. And then your role becomes, how do you create an environment in which others can solve those problems? And that's really challenging. I know you're very passionate about developing talent within FMCG. What are the traits or mindsets that you look for in high potential future leaders?
The first one, and anyone who's worked for me can attest to this, is attitude over aptitude every single time. If you're curious, if you're resilient, if you're willing to grow, then for me, that will take you a whole long way. And so that's really important. I'm currently mentoring two of our team who are Joe Berry finalists this year, both under the age of 25. And a big part of their success so far is simply the attitude that they've brought to the process, to writing an essay, their mindset and their desire to learn. And for me, that is a real hallmark trait of a high potential leader. And I can see them being really successful into the future. The second one is mental agility. And now, to everything we've already discussed today, to just AI changing, the industry changing, you have to quickly reframe. You have to be able to say, you know what, I was working on this and this is where we were going, but we need to stop, reframe, reprioritize, and respond. And being able to do that within a short window of time and with clarity under pressure is really important for the leaders of the future. There's no steady state, we know that, but it allows the business to be confident that you've got actions in place and you're taking action. So that would be the second one. And the third one, which I'm very passionate about, is emotional intelligence. You have to be able to read a room and you have to adapt your styling accordingly. A few weeks ago, I was unwell and I was on a call for our leadership team monthly business review meeting, and everyone else is in the room and I'm on the other end of the call. And it was exceptionally uncomfortable because I'm used to being in there and actually seeing what's not being said. You know, what's the body language? Who's kind of like looking around and what's the focus? And you just can't have that. And I think emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, but also the more senior you become as a leader, you're in more decision-making forums. And it's really important that you're able to understand what's really going on. And for me, that's a huge trait of a high-quality leader. Maybe not what you expected.
No, all super valuable. And your perspective on this is key because you've gone on a real journey within the Arnott's business from that kind of entry-level role you spoke about to now running the ANZ snacking business. Along the way, what have been some of the things that you've had to unlearn or let go of for you to become more effective as a leader?
It links a little bit to what I said before. Your results are on permanent display when you're in the sales team, and anyone listening can totally agree with me on this. And you get a lot of attention from people in the business on decisions that you make or decisions that you don't make. So one of the hardest parts for me was really learning to not feel bad for making decisions that I knew were right for the business, but may not have been popular. And it's even difficult to say. You really have to let go of second guessing yourself and what will others think of my decisions. That's a really big moment for me I had to get past. And it allowed me then to really lead with more clarity, but also with conviction. You know, you have to be confident in the decisions that you make, but the visibility around me was something that I really kind of needed to let go of and know that it was the right thing to do.
And we spoke about this last time you came on the pod a little bit in terms of diversity and representation, which have been a real focus for you.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like positive change has happened and where do you think we need to keep pushing?
I would say we need to I'll start with where we need to keep pushing. I think we need to keep pushing on men and women in non-traditional roles. And I've spoken about this before. And for me, that's so important to be able to have opportunities for everyone. I've said, and I'll say it again, I'd love to see more women as CFOs. I'd love to see more men as leaders of people and culture functions. And I think we've still got a ways to go in that. But what excites me and where we are getting further along is in the generations that are coming up, I think it is a less obvious, men, women in certain roles. I think because they're having such different experiences, many of them will have multiple careers. I've really only had one. I think that breadth of experience coming through will enable them to look at opportunities as opportunities, not 20 years ago when someone said, would you move into the sales team? And I was like, that's a bit of a boys' club. I'm not sure that would cross their minds now. So I think there's been some progress in that, and hopefully I'll continue to play a role in demonstrating it for both men and women. At Arnott, we joined about maybe 2 years ago the National Association of Women in Operations, NAWO, a great organisation. And we recently had a morning tea at our offices, and we had a whole raft of men and women from different industries. And I think more connections of people in different industries across different age groups, across different challenges is a really good way to be able to progress for everyone. So I think associations like that are doing a really wonderful job, and we're really grateful to be a part of it.
Great. And finally, is there one piece of advice that stuck with you throughout your career that you'd like to share?
You won't always have the answers. Yep. And maybe it's the commercial drive in me, or the kid that was working at the service station at age 12. I think the advice given to me had been clarity beats certainty every time. And we've spoken a bit today around the environment we're working in is continuing to change, and you're not going to have the answers to everything. But if you can be clear about direction, you can hold on to really good values, you instill trust in others, and you can kickstart momentum. And I often say to the team, we can break things down into what's got to happen now, what has to happen next, and then what happens. And rather than thinking just about getting the answers and getting it done, breaking things down. So clarity certainly beats certainty every single time.
Great. And I think for a lot of people listening who are maybe stepping into leadership roles, that part around not having to have all the answers is key, because that's a pressure I see people put themselves under all the time. And I think that's something you exemplify really well, is that you don't need to be perfect.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, no, you talk about that really well.
Thanks.
Brilliant. So, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. I think there's so much absolute gold in that for our listeners. If you're listening to this and there's anything in the conversation today that sparks a thought about your own career, we're here to help you. So reach out to myself or one of the team. We'd love to talk to you about your career and where you want to take things. Feel free to connect with Michelle. I know she'd love to hear from you if anything sparks interest for you. And we'll be back soon with more episodes. And in the meantime, we're always here to help you with your career. So from me and everyone at AXR Recruitment and Search, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.